human gene editing?
So looking at it from the scientific perspective, we first have to explain what is human gene editing. Human gene editing is the adding, removal, or manipulation of DNA in our bodies. This can be done with human embryos or with our own cells, like as we stand here today. The technology itself continues to evolve, and it's been around since about 1970. And then in 2012, CRISPR-Cas9 was discovered, and it's a technology that utilizes the protein enzyme Cas9, where and it can take apart the genome sequence and then kind of like leave that like ability to add in more DNA. It's much faster, cheaper, quicker than before. This has been said a billion times by both our peers and scientists themselves. This technology opens up a lot of the conversation, and it brought back a lot of researchers to the subject because it reopened the interest. It would be beneficial for those who have genetic illnesses. A lot of genetic illnesses that are transferred down the human genetic line, right, those can pose a lot of issues for families, like something cystic fibrosis like that. If there is a way to prevent that in your future child, you would want to do so, right? But the problem comes with what moderation will there be in place, right? Regulations have to be in place to make sure that the body is protected, the human embryo is protected, and that scientists can't go too far with the research that they do.
So I chose to research the ethical side of this lens. So, yeah. Okay, so one of the first questions that I researched was what needs to be fixed. So this goes into how do you classify what genes and what genomes you can edit. So this is cosmetic appearance versus medical things. So should we edit the genes for skin color or eye color, or just do things like Natalia said for medical reasons like curing cystic fibrosis? And then also one of the big issues that I found are safety concerns. So we have the UNO sign for irreversible effects. So this means that once you edit with CRISPR, you can't really go back, and those genes are then passed on to future generations. So this brings up the issue of consent. Do these generations want to be edited, and how do we deal with that if they don't? And this can be when they're edited, they might have to live up to higher standards. So trends and commercialization is another issue. So commercialization is using CRISPR for negative reasons, like you're making the process quicker and cheaper. And you want to avoid this because it can cause safety issues, and commercialization can also lead to trends like designer babies. And scientists are really concerned that these trends will control will be lost of the technology, and safety will be a big question. So lastly, we have the issue of accessibility. So CRISPR, most people want to make CRISPR available to everyone, and you want to have equality throughout all of the classes, so you don't just want it to be available to the wealthy. So you really have to work on getting CRISPR available to everyone, so it's not a question of safety, and you're not putting your child, it might be done wrong.
So human genetic engineering is right around the corner, and that means it's not us who are going to have to deal with making these decisions. It's going to be us making the decision for our children if they're going to have to deal with this. The hope is that eventually CRISPR will become a routine, simple household name. Jennifer Donna, the creator of CRISPR, believes that it can lead into choosing your own height, hair color, eye color, anything you want. If it goes into this cosmetic route, this will lead to a new generation of designer babies, which has its own issues, as Angela stated. But this would eliminate the sense of perfection in a human standard. It would turn into more of a scientific perfection, because down to a science, in our genes, we would be perfect. Designer babies, though, you can choose if you want a boy who is 6'2", with brown hair and hazel eyes. You can literally create that. CRISPR does need proper oversight, though, to continue into the future, along with continuance with advancements in technology. CRISPR needs to continue with extreme caution because, that's next slide. CRISPR needs to continue, but with extreme caution, because this has been going on since the 1970s, and this means if the government made it illegal today, everything would just go underground, which would lead to, it would A, be illegal, B, it would not have modern technology, and C, it would not have proper overview. This can lead into an increased number of deaths, and that would not be okay. As a whole, CRISPR needs to continue, but with extreme cautions for scientific ways, such as to keep evolving with new technologies, new formats, new whatever. It needs to keep evolving for the ethical point of view, so it can become accessible to everyone. And it needs to evolve not for us, but for our children. The end. There's a whole bunch of these.
Okay, thank you. Let's see here. Natalia,
Yes.
give one specific way your thinking changed as a result of Angela's findings.
So Angela's findings with the ethical conversation of the entire matter definitely changed my perspective because I was looking at it more in depth to the science version. And when I looked at it from the ethical standard, I think that brought more into like the cost and like big picture, what is this with like the designer babies and how does that affect society? And I think rather than just looking at it from like a researcher from a lab trying to change genetics, it definitely changed my perspective. So like how would like the average citizen be able to afford this and then go forward, and would they have a designer baby? Like what would that mean for us as a society? So that's probably the most why it changed.
Okay, thank you. Angela, describe an argument from one of your peers' individual reports that made you think differently about your solution.
I really liked his argument of like just looking into the future, like the whole lab really like kind of solidified my stance because we already said that yes with caution, and Tibby really showed me how like designer babies can happen and how that can be a thing, how it can be normalized, but how we have to be safe and not take it too far.
Okay. Tibby, reflecting on Angela and Natalia's work, which one had the greatest impact on your overall understanding of the problem your group identified?
Each one played a key role in my overall understanding. I would probably have to say Angela, though, because from an ethics point of view, future is all based on ethics, and ethics are based on the present. And so that became a key role in what I'm going to talk about, or what I talked about. And then, but Nat had the scientific route, which played a role in how we can get this to people and children, which had an impact on what I said too.
Okay, thank you.